Hello, folks. Welcome back to WW2 TV. And he only went and did it after years of photographic study. In June, Michael Akkerman actually spent a few days in the real physical environment of the real Omaha Beach and the Vida Stansted. And today he revisits Vierville-sur-Mer, the area around there, with the results of his findings. So we're all very excited about that. So how are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, thank you. Thank you for having me, Paul. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to everyone watching who helped contribute to that trip.
Absolutely. And while it's there, I'll put up on screen now the QR code to Michael Akkerman's Patreon page, so you continue funding his research and products, because we are all better off for it. So,
oh well, thank you. Thank you so much,
before
sir.
you get into the actual presentation, I mean, people will want to know, what was it like when you kind of stepped out of the vehicle and there you were looking at Omaha Beach for the first time? Because you must have felt like you knew it.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I had a camera with me the whole time, and that was one moment, though, because I was so wrapped up in everything of finally arriving there that I didn't film it. I wish I had, though, because I was speechless, and at the same time, like, trying to figure out, like, okay, where do I go in terms of where I was staying at the time? But also, like, I mean, going down the descent of Vierville, that's what we're looking at today, the Vierville descent. Yeah. And that was the first spot I got to. And walking down that to the bunkers of WN72 and then onto the beach, I'm like, this is like otherworldly. It was almost like, stepping into another dimension or something. I don't know, but it was really interesting because when I came down that and looked on both sides and saw, the Point de Percé and stuff like that, and then the rest of the beach and stuff, I'm like, man, this, like, photographs and film footage do not capture just how expansive it all is, just how huge it is. I mean, it's huge, the whole area.
Yeah, I mean, I was just there myself with Bag this week, and and it wasn't even high tide, low tide. It was nearly high tide. But you walk out a little bit and you just put your phone up and you try and take a photo, and you realize you're capturing about 5% of what is there around you. And
yes,
I've been living here for how many bloody years, and it still kind of takes my breath away, as does the Hill 3114 at Mortan or the Falaise Gap. It's that whole thing about actually being in the place there. But we'll get into what you found out later on. But it's the other thing I think is I'm conscious of with your visit there is that you were able to kind of strip the layers away, because you had the understanding of the current Omaha Beach, the kind of the pre-war Omaha Beach, the wartime Omaha Beach, and also the post-June the 6th Omaha Beach. Just like you use layers in Photoshop, you must have been kind of using layers in your own visual understanding of it. Okay, that was there, that wasn't there, that masks that. Whereas most people's first visit there, it's a bit overwhelming because it's not what they think it's going to be.
Yeah, it is one of those situations. I hate to sound so cliche, but just you really have to be there to fully absorb it. It is one of those experiences, and I was feeling that for 7 days straight while I was there, and going from different. I mean, when you and I on my last day, you and I went to Coda's Draw. I was like, man, this is some serious hiking through this brush.
Yeah.
Get through that.
We foolishly tried to get to the Vida Stansted 64, didn't we? Up the other side of Ruquet.
Oh my God, that was crazy.
We got bitten, we got stung, we got muddy, we got scratched. But it's that. As again, someone who'd studied it, I think even there you realize how much of Omaha Beach is even just inaccessible to the general public. Or the bluffs behind, and the people who visit it for half an hour on a day trip, they take away something. But in 7 days, you realize that for everything you saw, there were two other things you didn't see, or you didn't see to the extent you'd like to.
Oh yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people have asked me, "Oh, were you able to see this and this?" There were a number of things I just wasn't able to get to, but yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I have to apologize to some people I've spoken to over the years, because they've shown me, people who have visited that place many times, and they've shown me photographs of various spots, and I'm always like, "Well, climb up there and take a photo of it." And they're like, "I can't do that." I'm like, "Why not? Like, it's insane." I'm like, "I could climb that thing," and then now I've actually been there. I'm like, actually probably no. And also now that I also realize that there's a lot of private property involved, and I did get yelled at once while I was there.
It's a rite of passage, I think, as a battlefield explorer, is to get shouted at some point by someone.
And I hightailed it out of there too. I didn't stop and say, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I got the hell out of there like a prison break. And but the WN64 trek that you and I and our friend Veronique and Niels and my friend Holden, we all took, that was it was like going through jungle canopy.
Yeah.
Through that, and I'll tell you all something. At one point, Paul, his arms are just bleeding and stuff, and I'm like, Paul, you're bleeding, and he looks back at me and he says, "I ain't got time to bleed."
Yeah, it was the Predator quote there, and we did find that small little bit of concrete.
We found that concrete block. Yes,
okay, we did find a bit then, and
yeah, my friend Holden
tried to make it an easy way down. Anyway, that's a movie. That is the one of those classic Lost Patrol type movies, isn't it? Although we did bring everybody back. I mean, at one point I thought one of us might not have been coming back. But anyway, we digress now. Let's get to the stuff. So we'll bring your stuff up. So yeah, you've as we said at the beginning there, you've done all that forensic work in advance, but then now you've been there yourself. I mean, we were talking when we were together. There were some things that your visit there was confirming things you thought, and then other things that it was raising more questions, because that's the process.
That's absolutely it. Yeah. And because everything, I mean, you can do an episode on just one of these positions. So, I wanted to narrow this down a bit. I didn't want to cover all of Stutzpunkt Vierville, like WN 73 and 74. I thought, let's focus on the descent, the Vierville descent, 71 and 72. That was those two were probably the ones that I tried to explore the most. And there are many parts of them that are very inaccessible, although thanks to some of our friends, that I was able to find different ways to get into. So it was cool. And I share not only a number of wartime photographs and my own maps and stuff for the slideshow, but a number of photos that I took while I was there.
Yeah. So, well, without further ado, as YouTubers say, let's get to it.
Yes. So yeah, the Vierville descent. So WN 71 and 72 revisited the actual blockade of Vierville-sur-Mer, the actual part of Vierville that was blocked off from accessing from the beach. You and I have covered this, I think, on the first episode we did together, but that was very like ad hoc and not terribly organized. I thought, especially after the trip, let's go back and take a look with some maps and some further findings. So
the remake, essentially.
The remake, that's
reboot,
right. Yes,
the reboot. Yeah,
the reboot, the expanded universe, as it were. So try and get this slideshow moving here. So yes, for those who don't know, Omaha Beach, it's a very vast area, and I've covered this. I open all my Omaha Beach presentations with this, but very vast section. So there are multiple different spots of Omaha Beach that you can explore and just divide your whole attention to. Stutzpunkt Vierville, Stutzpunkt Saint Laurent, and Stutzpunkt Colleville. And the one that we are going to be looking at today is the far western exit to Vierville-sur-Mer, the far western beach exit, known amongst most people as the Vierville descent. Places like Les Moulins, La Ruquet, and Ruisseau des Moulins, at WN62. Those draws I have found do have actual names that people have put on them. I've never found one for the Vierville descent, so I've just come to call it the Vierville descent. Maybe that will become the official name for it at some point. I don't know, but people call it the Dog One exit because that's what it was, the Dog One exit to the Americans. Now, this is what it looks like today, and I don't know if you can see my cursor, but that building right there, that gray rectangle, that's where I was staying when I was in Normandy. So all 7 days I stayed in this building right here, thanks to my friend Doug and Kathy, who own the Hardelay Villa. They have an apartment in there, and they let me stay there, which was great. And they were very, very accommodating. So this is present day Vierville-sur-Mer. So for any people who visit there, you probably have gone through this area and you see this massive parking lot. It's a very tourist type place, lots of, villas and such. Well, this is what it looked like back in 1942 when the war was really kicking off and the Germans had finally, really started to occupy the area 2 years after the Battle of France. But let's go back and do a little history here. So Vierville-sur-Mer, specifically the Vierville descent, Throughout the 1800s, like many remote Norman villages, Vierville-sur-Mer was a farming community. You know, it wasn't until the late 19th century, at the height of the Belle Epoque era, also known as the Beautiful era, that the village began to transform into a seaside resort where Parisians started to visit. Between 1895 and 1914, several houses were built along the newly paved road of the Vierville descent, which then bent east towards Saint-Laurent-sur-Mer, which we have covered in previous episodes. The descent contained a number of villas, hotels, and casinos, making it an ideal summer getaway for Parisians. Now, one thing I thought I'd throw out here is that for Americans, between Americans and Europeans, a casino is not the same thing. Casinos for Americans refer to like places in Las Vegas for gambling, and casinos, though, in terms of old school Europe, refer to like a clubhouse or a summer house for different types of clubs that people can meet. Sometimes also a hotel or like a resort type getaway. So you see casino referred to in a lot of these types of places. It's just referring to like a summer clubhouse.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue this. So yeah, as you can see, this is right at the mouth of the Vierville descent in the early 1900s, and all these houses are starting to go in. Here is the first rendition, the first iteration, if you were, of the Hotel du Casino right here. And then you have some other houses up here, Villa Mary, and then Le Chimera's house, which become important a bit later. Let's keep going. So yeah, very, very nice, idyllic kind of area for people vacationing to the coast, to the Norman coast. And yeah, so yeah, Hotel du Casino down here, and then behind it, Le Chimera's house, also known as Kuzenberch. And at some point around 1930, or let me go back for a little bit here. Okay, yeah. So at some point, the Hotel du Casino is expanded into this massive house here, and this is what's referred to as the casino, Hotel du Casino. Then the Le Chimera's behind it, and then the last major building to emerge was in 1930 with the 4-story Eden Bellevue Hotel, also known as how do you pronounce it? Legaloy or something like that.
I think it was something.
Yeah, Legaloy. It means the Welshman, I think, in French, and that's the name given to the cafe that was part of it. But yeah, this big house, this big hotel right at the end of the Vierville descent, and that's a great photo of it, showing the terrace, which is probably the most notable thing about it, yeah. And will become important later on. So after the fall of France in 1940, the German Wehrmacht arrived in Calvados, and throughout 1940 and 1941 requisitioned several seaside villas and hotels in the Vierville descent, including the Hotel du Casino and the Hotel Eden Bellevue, forcing the original owners to relocate to the heart of Vierville-sur-Mer. The area became occupied by the German 716th Infantry Division, specifically the 726th Infantry Regiment. So that's an aerial photo. I don't know if I've been able to pin down a date on when that was, but you can see the Hotel Eden Bellevue, the Hotel du Casino, and Le Chimera's houses all still sitting there.
Oh, I think I have that down as 42, but I don't know.
Probably, yeah. Okay, so in 1942, this is when things really started to take shape for the Germans. As we've talked about in previous episodes, the German resistance nests along the area would become Omaha Beach had different designations than what were first installed in 1942. So protecting the Vierville descent was not actually WN 71 and 72, but WN 30A and B of Stutzpunkt 30. So, and they're in the same spots that the original nest, that the nest eventually came to be when Omaha Beach was established, or when Omaha Beach occurred. But so, yeah, this is then June 1943, looking into the Vierville descent right there. Now, interestingly, I haven't been able to find really much information on Stutzpunkt 30, the first resistance nest that was there, other than the fact that in the 1943 aerial, you can see a ring stand for a KWK 38L42 anti-tank gun right there down by the in front of the Le Chimera's house. And that's as we've talked about in previous episodes, that was not uncommon when the Germans first established defenses along these coasts, that they would put these defenses right down on the beach rather than back on top of the bluffs. So there's a close-up of it right there. You can barely see it, but yeah, that octagonal shape.
Yeah.
So in 1943, the defensive strategy was changed, and as part of the newly established Stutzpunkt Vierville, the nests were redesignated as WN71 on the east bluff and WN72 in front of the draw, and up on the western bluff. Germany's engineering construction firm Organization Todt had taken up residency in the massive Chateau du Vieuville house, about 500 yards up the descent. The Todt organization got to work demolishing many of the villas at the mouth of the draw as fortifications and obstacles started to take shape. The Piprel Hotel, Du Casino, and Les Chimères houses were spared and utilized by the Germans. So those are ones that they actually didn't tear down. The Piprel house turned into a rest home for troops, and it even became known as Der Müde Theodor amongst the 716th Division, and that means the tired Theodore in German. I don't know why they called it that, but they did. At the same time, the beach was closed to civilians in order to set up a series of obstacles. So, as you can see in this 1943 photo, a number of houses are starting to be demolished. This one right down here in the center is the Hotel Eden Bellevue, and it has the top two floors have been shaved off completely, and it looks very dilapidated, and there are further things going on to establish this as a defensive position, which we will get into here soon. So how does the Vierville descent in 1942 go to the Vierville descent on D-Day 1944 looking like this? Well, here's one of my maps chronicling this whole area that I have meticulously gone through and added a bit to, since you and I have now visited there in person and looked at various things. So WN71 up on the eastern bluff, and then WN72 down on the beach and also on the western bluff. All right, so WN71 was placed on the eastern plateau, overlooking the beach and protecting the road that led inland to Vierville-sur-Mer. The nest was accessible via a path that led from the Hamel Apôtre in Vierville, there was a road that went all the way down to Vierville. Lost my place there for a second. The buried comm lines from Vierville ran parallel along the path to a field phone inside a concrete Feldmassig shelter of WN71. So you can see it really well in aerial photographs, the buried comm lines emanating from Vierville that go all the way to the various WNs. Really interesting to see. This shelter also contained a large water tank and ammunition storage unit with concrete doors, the type that were produced in large numbers in this sector. Another troop shelter made of wood was also in the area just north of the concrete one. Evidently, there was another shelter that was under construction that was never finished. And there we go. Yeah. So the defenses atop the plateau were quite standard for a coastal resistance nest. 2 Granatwerfer 34s were positioned on the plateau in dugouts to fire 8-centimeter mortars onto the beach, not in concrete toe brooks like on WN73, but in open trench positions, just these dugouts that you see like in this schematic right here, this wartime document here. To guard the nest from an inland attack, 2 machine gun toe brook fortifications type 1699 were placed at the rear of the nest. That's also another thing you see on a lot of these, such as WN73, these toe brook positions for machine guns at the rear of the nest to prevent any inland attacks. And you and I actually looked at these in person while we were up there. At least one of them, I think. Yeah, and it's interesting because the one that I was in, the one that I hopped into, its opening on the toe brook is larger than normal. So I don't know why they did that. Maybe it was because of a special type of mounting system they had. But yeah, interestingly, that specific one there, it's the one on the left on my map, has a wider opening than normal. So kind of interesting. So quite a unique fortification was the concrete double embouchure MG pillbox at the western edge of the nest, right on the escarpment overlooking the entire draw. Now, this is one that if you've ever visited this area, you can see it quite well. Although when I was there, it was pretty consumed by overgrowth and such. But
Yeah.
it's it's pretty visible from the Vierville descent. Now, when it was actually there during the war, the ground came all the way up to it. But after the battle, the Americans eventually excavated this whole area and ripped apart a lot of the cliffs. So now when you look at it, it's like the bunker is right here, and then there's just a solid cliff.
Yeah,
But
it gets referred to as the one in the cliff, but it's only in a cliff now. It would have been on a more gentle slope at the time. Still
Yes.
well located, but it has a different feel now because of what's left.
Exactly. This photo right here that I put up is one of the only ones I've been able to find where you can actually see how it would have originally been. There's a camouflage net over it, but this right here is the ground right below the firing embouchures right here. So pretty cool. And that's the inside of it. And I've stood right here at one point. I think our friend Veronique took a photo of me. And as we've discussed in previous episodes, in the Les Moulins episode, these fortifications would have originally had these metal doors, 48 P8 steel embouchure doors, where they could open and close them and mount these machine guns in there. They wouldn't just be firing out these raw embouchures, as you were. So they don't have them now. I'm guessing at some point after the war, they took them out for scrap metal. So 1 second. All right. So that's one of the most prominent features of WN71. So this was...
I remember when we were there and when we've discussed it in the past, it's that the age-old debate is just because a casemate or bunker has apparent fixings for a certain type of thing,
right,
it doesn't necessarily mean that thing was ever there or was ever fitted, or if it was fitted, it ever fired. It's that kind of the unpreciseness of studying these things, is that there is a theoretical setup. This thing will have this thing in it, but that doesn't always mean that thing was ever there. And that's I think
true.
One of the riddles of these investigations is that you get to these certain points, you go, well, we don't know exactly what was in this thing. Just because it can be set up for this thing doesn't mean it had that thing in it.
I know. I talk to people. In fact, I was just talking to someone about this the other day, about that sort of thing where, well, this what would have this had? I'm like, well, my theory is that, so you do have to sometimes preface this with, well, what I think is, and it's okay to have this be open for debate at some point, to look at different things and say, well, I think this because of this. Well, actually, I think this because of that. So, it is. There are a number of things that are open for debate.
And as we've discussed in the past, is that every German commander, every Widerstandsdienst from Norway to the border with Spain is requesting the latest up in weapons. He's wanting more ammunition. He's wanting more of this. Yep. And there's the store cupboard is fairly bare by 1944. So some positions are getting prepared for something to go in, but the thing never arrives. Then D-Day happens, and then people have done books speculating that if there are 12 bunkers, there are 12 weapons, which is starting from an assumption.
Absolutely, and we'll get to one eventually in this, where there was absolutely something made for a piece of weaponry that was never installed. So,
and we had another question to someone deal with now. Gary asked about, to construct the defensive position, did they improve road infrastructure to do so, or rely on what was there? And this is one of the things about all the Omaha ones, is that sometimes the positions that are possibly in the better defensive position are not as easy to get to as one that in a secondary. But so from my point of view, I'll let you put your perspective. The Germans are balancing access with the defensive qualities of something, and also they don't want to build too many really obvious roads leading up to things, because they know that's the kind of thing the Allies are looking for.
Yeah, the only roads that you see to these nests are dirt pathways, and
Yeah.
those are also most of the time cut off by barbed wire or some kind of obstacle. So it is difficult sometimes to get to these places, which is why most of the actual troops assigned to these nests, the static troops, would have lived in them. They have their troop shelters in there, so they wouldn't be leaving these places very much. And but it is interesting because there is a lot of construction going on, and we'll just take a look
Yeah.
at that in a minute. So yeah, there are various things where you see different points of access, whether it's from the beach or whether it's from behind. It's like at WN62, there's a path from the beach leading up the nest, because they were still in the process of putting log ramps down onto the beach. So, and that area wasn't cut off by barbed wire or anything. But in terms of this specific area, though, the only way you could get to WN71 would have been from Vierville-sur-Mer. I mean, the paths are so steep, and there is, and you and I went to it. We had to go all the way back to around where Vierville was, turn around, and then go up this path to finally get to the plateau.
Yeah.
And that's without any barbed wire or anything, So it is difficult for some of these people to come around and get to these nests. And they did implement the rear defenses so they could guard any kind of rear attacks. So pretty interesting.
Indeed.
Yep. All right, let's keep going here. So another interesting and unique fortification was located down a bit north from WN71, down the small drop sitting at the edge of the northern escarpment. This was another concrete shelter and storage facility at Feldmassig. And when you go on the inside, and I saw this myself, it has a lot of red brick along the inside to complete the interior. And that's another thing that you see with some of these nests is that they look from the outside, they look like they're very, concrete and such. But when you go inside some of them, it's kind of ad hoc and a bit, unstable. The German unit or organization tote members decided to take advantage of this position and add a small room with 2 firing embrasures sited east and west. Still found inside are the niches for storing tin boxes for machine gun ammo, as well as range cards painted on the walls. So I've had a couple people who say, well, I don't know, maybe this was just an observation position. Like, I don't think so at all. To me, it has the recesses in the wall next to each position for storing ammunition. It has the range cards on the wall right next to where the machine gunner would have been. These were machine gun positions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't want to say how I was able to access this, but I was able to get inside this specific position right here. That's on the inside looking up the stairs. There are these concrete stairs you have to come down to get inside it. That's the inside again. This is the actual storage unit part of it, the Feldmassig, where people could take shelter and also store things here. And if the photo on the left, you can see what I'm talking about with that red brick. You have what most of this looks like, typical German fortifications, the concrete walls with the shuttering texture. But then you have this very kind of flimsy looking red brick completing it. So again, using everything they could to finish it. And that's yours truly right there in the that small room at the edge of the pillbox where the 2 firing embrasures were. And this was really exciting for me because I've studied this specific bunker for a long time, and getting to be able to go inside it was really, really cool and kind of mind-blowing to actually stand where the 2 machine gunners would have been. Right behind me are those recesses in the walls for storing ammo tins. And it looks like each one could probably hold about 10 or maybe 12 ammo cans. That's looking out that's the western embrasures. That's looking west. That's where the western machine gunner would have been. And then that's the east embrasure. And the really interesting thing about the east embrasure, I think we talked about this in the episode we already did on Stutzpunkt Vierville, is that there is this gnarly battle damage right here on the wall where you can clearly see a round from a tank flew in here. I mean, that's me standing right next to it. So whoever was firing from this position right here, the German machine gunner, if he was still standing there when that round hit, I mean, just obliterated. And I would assume that he was standing there. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have fired on this position. And I stuck my hand through that hole. It's the perfect size for a 75 millimeter anti-tank round. And we also know that there were a number of Sherman tanks sitting on dog green and dog white sector. So yeah, there's me after putting my hand in that hole to measure it. And I'd seen photos of this battle damage before, and when you look at it, you can see the actual trajectory of where this round came in. It's really, really kind of haunting to look at. So that's the east embouchure. That's my hand right there. I wanted to put my hand under all this overgrowth and this dirt right here to try to see if there was any kind of mounting system for a machine gun, and I couldn't find anything other than this lip right here where you could mount a bipod for a machine gun. So that was one thing when I got there. I was like, I want to see, because in a lot of these positions, they did have various types of ways to mount machine guns and such, but this one just seemed to rely on, you bring a machine gun, you just set the bipod right there and brace it against this lip right here. So keep going. There is, so as people who have watched previous episodes of my Omaha Beach research know, I also do a lot of artwork that's based on my research. I'm an artist, a graphic designer. So after visiting that Feldmassig and taking all those photos on the inside and recording everything, I decided to do my own digital painting of it, cutaway piece. This right here is where the wall facing the ocean would be. But so I cut that out, and so we could see on the inside what this would have been like for German machine gunners on the inside. Now, another thing, too, is that for a lot of positions along the Atlantic Wall, they would have doors, or something covering the actual embouchure itself. So when it wasn't in use, it would be closed, and rainwater and seawater and dirt and all that stuff couldn't get on the inside. So that's why I put those there. Now, that spot that I just showed where my hand was is this is where I was standing, right where this position, right where this guy is right here. And that lip right there where you could rest an ammo cannon and the bipod for a machine gun is what we're seeing here. Also, when it comes to German machine guns in these fortifications, they would, most of the time, it was standard practice to utilize the rear mount for the bipod rather than the one at the end of the barrel. So it makes sense that for this type of position, they would be using the bipod mounted on the lower part of the machine gun rather than on the very tip of it. And then that's the West gunner, the same thing. Another thing that you see with a lot of these guys, they have hand grenades right there next to their machine guns. Just in, maybe if they had to do it, if someone was about to, come up and attack the position, they could throw a hand grenade down. Extra spare barrels on the inside, rifle. There's the range card right next to his head. Yep. And with a pencil, he would mark on that range card the distances that prior to, the invasion at some point, he would have measured himself what various distances were and mark it on that thing. So he could immediately adjust his machine gun to those positions and without having to, deal with, zeroing it in, over and over again. So another interesting thing about WN71 is that there are two improvised machine gun pillboxes. And I usually don't see this get mentioned at all, but the Feldmassig with the two firing embouchures we were just looking at was right up here. However, back up on the plateau there, when you see in aerial photographs, then you can see in this photograph right here, there was also a position for two improvised underground machine gun pillboxes, one facing west and one facing east. And this right here is a German blueprint showing how these types of fortifications would have been built. And then this photo right here, taken in September 1944, is the only one I've been able to find that actually shows the west embouchure of WN71 right here, cut into the escarpment. And
we had, just to interrupt, we had the question about whether it would have been an MG34 or MG42, and we're back into the whole what were the machine guns along Omaha Beach, and there are various opinions, but I think you and I would probably agree that it would be highly unlikely to be MG42.
Absolutely. I tell people who ask me about that, because the thing has come up like, well, wait a second, did the Germans have MG42s at all? And the answer is yes. However, when it comes to MG42s at Omaha Beach, most of them would have been used by the 352nd guys.
Yeah.
You know, the guys of Grenadier Regiment 916 who were reinforcing the area, and their positions would have been around the towns, along, you know, various parts of the escarpments where there wasn't a WN. You can see them in aerial photographs, like around Coda's Draw is a good example of that.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes, there would have been MG42s at Omaha Beach, but most of them would not have been used inside bunkers and, you know, various fortifications, pillboxes. They would have been used out in like a improvised trench, you know, a machine gun trench and stuff like that. So these bunkers, all of the bunkers, pillboxes, machine gun pillboxes and such, would have been built by the static troops of the 716th, and those guys were mostly armed with the MG34s and the captured weapons like the French Mac 31s and the Polish WZ30s that Franz Gockel famously had. So that's why in this specific cutaway here that I did, this was one of the first ones I ever did. This one is specifically supposed to be one at WN65. However, it does apply to the same kind of pillbox that would have been at WN71. And that's why, because it's a static position, I depict it as a French Mac 31 machine gun. And the same goes for the cutaway that we just saw of the Feldmassig. They're using MG34s because those are static troops of the 716th. If I was going to depict a machine gun trench from a 916 infantry regiment guy, he could have an MG42. So let's continue. And there are various other spots along the plateau that you can see in aerial photographs of various different fighting positions, like these open trenches we're just talking about. And also, interestingly, on the far eastern part of WN71 is WN71A, and WN71A was mostly just a construction site for additional fortifications that were being built. You can see like a big hut that was placed there at some point. It's this right here. So it was largely construction where they were trying to expand the nest. However, there's a map of the area from the 352nd Division that actually labels it as WN71A. So, you know, these resistance nests, they did have their kind of sub nests as well. Sometimes they were back in the villages themselves, and sometimes they were nearby, and they would be like, you know, WN71, but then, you know, WN71A, WN71B, and they were for the most part either storage facilities or ammo storage facilities or construction sites for further expanding fortifications. So, and then there's the aerial overlay of WN71 from my map. That's taken on June 6, 1944, on D-Day around 8 in the morning. Okay, so now we're moving on to WN72. Now, WN72 is mostly the two major bunkers down here just above the beach, but it also involves some of the positions up here on the plateau. And WN72, at the heart of it, has the three remaining houses of Hotel du Casino, Le Chimeras House, and I don't know how to pronounce that name, but I know it mostly as the Villa Mary, because the family that lived in that house, their name was Mary, according to Vierville historian Yves Cordel. But WN72, before we get to the big things here, let's see. There was let's get to some of the stuff that was back up on the plateau. So just like at WN71, WN72 had an almost identical improvised concrete double embouchure MG pillbox covering the draw. You know, again, you can see that one from WN71 down from the draw, but there was also one across the draw at WN72. So you have these two positions covering the draw, these two double embouchure kind of dog leg shaped pillboxes. And there's yours truly again at this specific one. Thanks to our friend Veronique Lefranc, she was able to find this actual position. Paul here didn't think it existed anymore. He wasn't sure.
No, I mean, Mag and I were talking just yesterday or the day before. Veronique is still living off the fact that she was able to show me, supposedly one of the Normandy experts, you, an Omaha expert, and Niels, the expert on the Germans in Normandy, a bunker that the three of us hadn't been to before and really weren't sure existed. So Veronique is still stepping lightly with pride of that. So yeah, our gratitude for her taking us there.
Absolutely.
It was really cool.
Oh, it was, because again, before visiting, I've seen so many photos taken on the outside and inside of the one at WN71.
Yeah.
I'd only known of maybe one photo of the one at WN72. And yes, when I became friends with her and we started talking, she told me, "Oh yeah, I know how to get to it," because I had asked people before, like people like you. I don't think I asked you.
You asked me, and I said I don't think it's there. I got it wrong. I don't know everything.
Well, it's no wonder though, because as you can recall, it was a trek to get to this thing.
Yeah, even Veronique, who knew where it was, still at the time, it took us about 10 minutes to find it, didn't it?
It took us about 10 minutes. Before that, it took us about maybe 15 minutes to actually get from the descent all the way up to it. We had to crawl under a fence and go through a field, and it was just insane.
And it was the building anticipation and the excitement was. I remember it was a really cool day.
It was, yeah, it absolutely was. And speaking of which, there he is right there with me. There, we both are at the embouchures. I remember you were saying to me like, "Oh, I can't believe we're actually here. I've never seen this one in person." So it was so awesome.
And it's that one of those kind of things that you could share. I shared it with my late friend Colin, who was not doing very well and since passed away. I remember messaging him as we walked back. I've just been into that bunker, and he was excited. But there'd be people I could tell it to, and they'd go, "Yeah, we don't really care." It's a geeky thing to celebrate. But yeah, for us though, that was really cool.
Oh yeah, it was. It was well worth it. So there's Paul and I standing at the embouchure. And I'm recording a bunch of stuff. One thing that's really cool about this bunker is that you can see at some point this whole thing was filled with water. This line, this discoloration right here, that's not paint. That's actually water stains from years and years of this thing being filled with water. I don't know why, but at some point it got drained of all the water, thankfully. So people like us were able to go inside it. And then again, yeah, there's the embouchure. Again, this is, what it would have, how it was supposed to have been. We don't know if it did have one of these doors fastened to it or not, but it was definitely meant for one. And there's our good friend Niels. He was with us. He's been on your show before. And one thing that was really cool is that when we were coming out, we found a piece of metal, a big piece of this rusted metal. And we're like, "Oh, what's this?" I took it with me. Niels picked it up, and I took this photo of him looking at it, and he determined that it's part of the door frame. When you go inside this, that's the very top part of the door frame that where it was made to have a steel door to get inside. Don't know if a steel door was ever installed, but this specific door frame here was, and I did take that with me. But Paul has it.
It's sitting in my basement. I trip over it every time I go down to feed the cat.
You're like, "Damn it, Michael!"
I should move it, but yeah, it's there.
Yeah, Paul took, because I couldn't fit it in my luggage. But Paul said, "I'll hang on to it." So I said, "Okay, thanks." So he has the top of the door frame from the WN72 double.
It's like Jurassic Park, and eventually, if I can take its DNA, I can construct entire bunker from it.
That's right. Yes, bunker DNA. Yes. So anyway, that was really cool to see. It's this one little part of WN72, this MG pillbox that just completes the double pillboxes here of 71 and 72, and a very small part of WN72, but it is really cool. And another really interesting.
And something that just occurred to me, sorry to interrupt you, is I think as fabulous as his presentation is, we've talked about the Channel Islands being like a showroom for what the Germans can do with the Atlantic Wall. The Vierville descent, as you're calling it, is something of a showroom in some ways for up and down the coast. It is a particularly well-defended draw, which, not that we're covering it today, is why a lot of the casualties on Omaha Beach were right in front and to the side of that draw compared to other parts of the beach where, without going down a rabbit hole, the German defenses weren't as good and the casualties weren't as heavy. The Germans would have liked to have got this depth of stuff basically everywhere.
Oh yeah,
and didn't, thankfully.
Then yes, and even so, it was still like it was not nearly as fortified as they had envisioned.
Exactly, it's still only halfway through their intention, and I think it's worth mentioning, and it'll come up, and it's come up in every one of our discussions. William said, "What were the plausible maximum capacity of ammo storage and medical supplies in these bunkers?" That's as you said about those recesses behind the machine gun thing is. Not that we're going to go into the whole concept of what the Germans are trying to achieve, is they just haven't got the ammunition or the resources for a long, drawn-out battle. For them to stand any chance of repelling an invasion, they have to deal with it really, really quickly, and whoever lands limp back off the beach really, really quickly. If the Allies, as they did, intend to stay more than about 30 minutes or an hour, the Germans are fucked, basically, because they just haven't got the ammo for a long... but basically, the Germans haven't got... the resources for a long war, full stop.
Anyway. You absolutely, well, you hear that amongst like German testimonies. It's like, okay, and eventually at a certain point, I'm going to run out of ammo, because you only have like maybe 10 boxes in your munition sablage unit to use. Yeah. But and what I was talking about earlier about the 352nd guys utilize, putting trenches and such along the escarpment in various improvised areas. That's what you can see right here. And these are all copied from an aerial photograph. That's what these kind of positions are in these maps and aerial photographs, are these Schützenloch positions, these slit trenches, mostly made by guys from Grenadier Regiment 916. One really cool thing about the top of WN72 that I was able to find through the Stuart Brandel photo collection was that there was a French Darn machine gun, anti-aircraft machine gun, model 1933, at the top of the WN72 escarpment up here in this AA position. So, Germans using a lot of French weapons. This is another great example of that, where there was a French anti-aircraft machine gun at the top of the WN72 bluff, just to the left of that concrete position we were just looking at. So, and now we're going to go down to the actual beach, down to the big bunkers that most people are pretty familiar with. The main fortifications of WN72 that were down on the beach, the 5 centimeter KWK-39 L42 anti-tank gun that had first sat in that ring stand had been moved inside a more formidable bunker. That's another very common thing you see with a lot of these positions. A 5 centimeter anti-tank gun sitting in an open ring stand is eventually removed and placed inside a much more formidable fortification. So the massive concrete, the massive casemate was not an ordinary regal bow design implemented by the Germans. Instead, it was an improvised casemate with 2 firing embrasures, one facing east and the other facing west, allowing its 5 centimeter anti-tank gun to swivel from one firing port to another. Additionally, the SK, that's Sonderkonstruktion, special construction, that's what it means in Germans, you refer to as the SK. The SK had a Tobruk mount for a French FT-17 tank turret with a Mach 31 machine gun. The turret was never installed, though. And on this blueprint right here, this is that Tobruk made for a turret, but it was never installed. You can see it even in aerial photographs that there was nothing in it. So that's the position. That's the bunker right there. And that's the bunker today. If you go there, it's another one that you can easily see. And I actually had the privilege to go inside this thing. Thanks to our friend Veronique, she was able to get in contact with the former mayor of Vierville-sur-Mer, and he allowed me to go inside it, which was so cool. I mean, it was awesome. The funny thing is that today it's used as a storage facility for the restaurant that's right next to it. So when you go inside it, the only way to get inside is through a metal door where you then go through the western embrasure of it, and then there are boxes for food supplies and stuff like that. So this is inside the SK right here. This is one of the range cards that's painted on the wall that's showing the beach looking east. And again, same thing with that, same thing as the machine gun positions. They would have marked on this thing right here with a pencil the distances that they could fire at. They could fire their gun. This is looking inside the turret. Now, this bunker today, if you go to it, a lot of ground has covered it, and the turret's part has a big piece of concrete covering it. Well, when you're on the inside, you can go through the hallway that leads to this turret, and this is the mount that would have at some point held the turret, but again, it was never installed. So it was so cool to be able to go in there and look up through this and see all of these different things here. I have a few photos of it, but
it's that weird paradox that the ones that are hard to get to, therefore by definition have more originality to them in some ways than the ones that are open exposed, because the weather has got in there. There are positions that I used to go into where you could see the range card, and now you can't anymore, and bits have been broken off and crumbled away and weathered. So like the mortar position up at 73, or is it 7? No, it is 72, isn't it? That has the pencil diagrams inside. You can no longer get into it. At least, although they're all covered over, they are preserved. Whereas if they were open the elements, they would have gone decades ago.
It's really weird, and that's how it was in that Feldmassieg at WN71. When I went on the inside, like some of the range cards and stuff, it's like, I can't believe that's still here. After 80 some years, the recesses for storing ammunition still has the wood molding on the inside of it, and sometimes it isn't really aged very much. Veronique, my first day there, Veronique took me up to the shelters up at WN73, and I'm going in and I'm looking, and there are parts in the concrete where you can see wood is still embedded in it. And it doesn't look very old at all. It looks almost fresh. It's so weird, like this time capsule almost.
And someone just asked, how long will they last? And it's a question that we get in Normandy: is anybody putting anything in towards preserving these positions? And the answer is basically no, unless they're inside a museum. There are places like Asville and Crisbeck and the tower at Wistram where they are part of a museum, but no, because as you said at the beginning, some are on private property, some are sort of effectively state-owned, some are dangerous, some are falling into the sea, some are on protected dunes, and they'll be around for a few more decades. They're not going to disappear, but they are gradually succumbing to time. But there's no initiative to preserve them, and I, personally speaking, I don't think there should be. I think they will stand for a long time, but I think somehow artificially restoring bunkers, then the future Michael Akkermans would then be analyzing the stuff that was built in the war and the stuff that was built in the 2020s to reinforce it. And I think it would just muddy the water. I'd rather just see them sitting in as they are, and then they will gradually, like everything else that man has built, they will gradually fall apart.
I completely agree with you, Paul, because that becomes a thing. Like, if you want to restore it or not, then that restoration becomes part of its history.
Yes.
Now I got to note that down, that, okay, then at this year it was restored to be this. Before that, it looked like this. And I've done that before with various things where I look at something and say, okay, well, and then you do more research and say, okay, at this point, this happened to it. So now it looks like this. And so, I'm completely okay with letting, excuse me, letting these things be a part of the earth, as it were, and just, be there as edifices in, is part of history. I don't want people to rebuild these things and resurrect a terrible time in history of death and destruction.
Well, that's the thing. We're going down a massive rabbit hole there, but living as I do in France, the bunker geeks can get excited by these things, as we just expressed, but they also represent a terrible occupation. They represent the arrival of Germans who deported tens of thousands of people, murdered hundreds of thousands of people, and then they're not relics of man's harnessing of power. They're not like windmills. They're not like I don't know, dams that provide power for people. They represent an authoritative, a tyrannical regime. So we can study them for what they are, but I think preserving them is a bit weird.
It is. Well, it's especially as I can tell you from firsthand experience, from an American perspective, there is a tendency to treat this stuff more like a franchise rather than actual thing happened. And that happens I with a lot of people I've noticed. I would like, oh man, they should restore that stuff. It's so cool. It's like, dude, for you, this is a very distant thing. This is like, I understand that for some people, like they view it as Star Wars or like a genre of some kind. But no, this is stuff that actually did happen that people lived through and it changed and shaped the history that we now live in. That shaped the world that we now live in. So small tangent there. You and I did that.
It was worth saying. Magali, we've both scored highly with Mag. Mag as a Norman-born girl is. Thank you for saying that. So yeah, that they represent different things to different people, and for some people they are still a very firm reminder of a brutal occupation.
Yes. And I by the way, I love going on those tangents when we were hanging out together. In
we had some good discussions. It really was. And but anyway, back to talking about how cool bunkers are in a kind of a going against what we just said.
We'll continue that at
the complex.
We'll continue that at the pub at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But so going back to WN72, let me get my presentation up here. So yeah, the second main casemate, is the big one that most people know about who study Omaha Beach or have been there. The R677 housing a massive 8.8 centimeter PAC 4341 anti-tank gun sighted east along the entire beach. Its counterpart was another one at WN61 on the complete other side. Unlike many other villas in the Vierville descent, Organization Tote utilized the Eden Bellevue Hotel and built the R677 within the building's walls, camouflaging the massive structure. This left most of the hotel's seaside terrace fused into the bunker's left side, that faces the ocean. So the remaining walls and improvised cobblestone were placed all over the face of the bunker and continued along the concrete anti-tank wall that protruded off the side, which cut the road in half. Additionally, a machine gun firing slot was added between the bunker and the anti-tank wall. And that's what this little doohickey is right here that you can see, this kind of L-shaped thing. That's a firing slot for a machine gun, also called a Schützenloch in German. So this is the bunker today. It is a monument to the U.S. National Guard. And you can go on top of it. And this was another one that I was able, thanks to our friend Veronique, was able to go inside. And the former mayor of Vierville let us inside. He went in with us. He didn't speak any English, so I had to rely on Veronique to translate and go back and forth between us. But he was super nice about the whole thing. He loved showing this whole thing, this bunker to me and going on the inside. And so that's me standing next to the the PAC 4341 on the inside. A lot of people say that that's not the original gun. It is, though. It is the original gun. And one of the main things that you can see is that the blast shield facing the sea has a bunch of 30-06 dings on it from people shooting at this thing throughout the day. One thing to note, though, is that the wheels are incorrect. PAC 4341 wheels are very big. They come about here. I think the wheels they got for this thing are from a PAC 38 or something. I mean, they're tiny. So that's the one thing that's a little disappointing about it, is that they tried to restore. Again, we're talking about this restoration thing. Now this is a footnote that I have to add to this. Instead of the correct wheels, they have these little dinky PAC 38 wheels on it. But that's me on the inside. Again, I was so excited to go inside and look at everything. You can see all of this battle damage that tells the story of what happened here. That's my friend Holden and I were looking at battle damage on one of the magazine walls where, again, an American 75 millimeter round from a tank was fired through the embouchure and collided into this wall right here. And the wall behind it has even more battle damage. So it continued through this wall into the other one. I've heard some people say the U.S. McCook was responsible for hitting this. I don't believe that. The chance that a battleship would be able to fire a 5-centimeter round through this embouchure would be incredibly lucky. It's not impossible, but incredibly lucky. And again, the actual hole right here where the round hit, I put my fist in it, and that is the correct size for a 75 millimeter anti-tank round. So that's behind the gun that's on the inside. This right here is the former mayor of Vierville-sur-Mer. He's showing us everything. He's standing in that magazine wall right there where ammunition would have been stored. And that's where the round came in, scabbed this side right here you can see, and just
I've
continue.
I've always thought it was that particular round that penetrated inside the bunker is from a tank. I
Yes.
think that the hole above the embrasure opening, that could well be the McCook, and obviously with the National Guard monument being on the top, we now can't see any damage that might have been there on the
Yes.
top. And I think that could well be naval fire, but I think the one that went in,
Yeah.
you gotta just use physics and trajectories, and I think for me it has to come from a tank. Just
Oh,
while
yeah.
we got that photo there, the wheels, just to throw some different thoughts in it there. Andrew is saying, weren't the small wheels original? The shield looks rather too close to the ceiling. If it was on the original wheels, wouldn't it have been raised the gun up so high?
No, the actual gun, the original gun would have basically come all the way up to the roof.
Right.
So it's not really much of a difference. It's just the wheels themselves, they're much smaller. But the
Okay.
gun, in terms of how it would be raised, wouldn't be much higher than that. No, the wheels on a Pack 43, 4143, they're not these tiny little ones.
But it wouldn't. You're saying that the correct wheels wouldn't have raised the gun up so high it wouldn't have
No,
fitted in the bunker.
no. And I have a photo
Okay.
that was taken inside after D-Day that shows that. That we'll get to.
Yeah, there
eventually.
is that one, isn't there? Yeah, there's that one. There's the 3 or 4 from that survey. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well
Mhm.
done. Good
We'll get
point.
to
Well
that soon.
presented. Yeah.
Yes, we'll get to that soon. But yeah, there is a lot of gnarly stuff in here where you can see these rounds came in and just spalled everywhere. All of this damage. I mean, if the crew happened to still be in here, and you can also see on the ceiling right here where all of these flakes from these rounds
Yeah.
just razor bladed through all of this stuff. It's just gnarly as can be.
Yeah.
So there's Holden, my friend Holden, standing there,
Mm.
and pretty cool. That's the range card. Now that one has been redone.
They
That's
repainted that about
yeah.
maybe just before COVID. I've got photos of it on my old phone there,
Yes.
and Arno just added, because Arno sent me some information about the bunkers. He's visited them as well. That there was no damage on top of the R677 before they put on the monument. So he says that there was no damage there, but there is
Right.
that one there above the embrasure that may or may not be. But I mean the McCook. If you look at the McCook's Navy log, it definitely was firing at Widerstands S72. So
Yes. It could very well be. You're talking about the round that has that big damage in the front. Where
they've
it's
kind
part
of filled
the,
it up with like tarmac from roads and like a black.
Yes, I recall it well. But and we'll get to some more photos here soon that probably show that. So anyway, I also did a digital painting of this specific one, another cutaway piece that shows how this specific casemate would have operated on D-Day. We can see the Pack 43, 41 in here, and the crew on the inside, the bundles of ammunition that would have been in these boxes right here in those magazine walls, and all of the cobblestone from the Eden Bellevue Hotel that was recycled onto this fortification and used as camouflage to try and make it look like a seaside building of some sort. And that's it labeled. And this is the anti-tank wall. You can see that Schützenlock position where a machine gun could have been mounted in there firing. Again, utilizing the rear bipod mount rather than the one down at the barrel. There's the Pack 43, 41 crew on the inside, standard for static, Pack 43, 41 crew. These guys were not artillery troops. That's one thing to note about the static units along these positions, is that they were actually regular infantry. So you can see their shoulder straps do not have the red piping of artillery troops. They're actually just standard infantry troops that would have manned these guns. So that is depicting the remains of the Eden Bellevue terrace that was fused into the side of the R677 casemate. And I had to cut some of this away right here so I could properly do a cutaway. But this would have had, these pillars right here. This would have continued. The railing system would have continued right here. It was pretty dilapidated and, shot to hell, but it was still, it was still there. And from what I've noticed in photographs taken from the beach before this was all really renovated, the Germans had tried to fill up this lower portion right here with all kinds of cobblestone, again, to make it look like make it look as much like a building as possible, even though after the construction of the R677, it was pretty dilapidated. So, and then that's behind it, just, giving some detail on the Piprel Hotel, the Hotel du Casino. So that's my
and just before we move on from that, you
Yeah.
you included the ammo boxes and crates in your graphic there, but Jonathan is saying, how many rounds do you estimate that cannon actually had? And then the next question would be, because we also give how many did it fire, and have we got any idea how many Allied landing craft stroke vehicles it hit? I mean, with the last question, we really wouldn't be able to really ascertain beyond kind of guesswork whether or not that 88.8 actually knocked out specific things. We know that landing craft were knocked out there, but going back to the first part, how would you determine how many rounds it would have?
Well, based on the amount that it would fill, because I based all of this on schematics of the regular German plans for R677 casemates, and also what I was able to document while I was there, and these specific types of ammunition crates that would have been stored inside these ammunition niches. You could have about 4 deep. About 4 deep would fit in there, alongside each other. And then from what I've seen in photos, they would go, maybe about to the head. And it also depended on just, how many people, had, how many rounds were given to these people. So probably about 24 rounds for each one so probably like 48, maybe 50 rounds in total on the inside of the casemate. That's what I have been able to determine anyway. It's up in the air. It's not an absolute thing, but between 50 and 60, I would say, for each casemate.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, we'll get to some photos that show some of this stuff that I did in my artwork. Okay, so yeah, that's the second main fortification, and then there is the overlay of the June 6 aerial over WN72 after everything we've just looked at. Now, another interesting thing about WN72 is that it had another one of these sub kind of nests that was attached to it, WN72A, which was a bit farther back in Vierville-sur-Mer, and that was used as a big storage facility around the church of Vierville-sur-Mer, and I think it's called like the Than Manor House or something. I have to look further into it, but you can see in aerial photographs a number of different positions where a lot of 352nd guys had taken up, various fighting positions up around these in this field. And here's actually a map drawn by Michel Hardelay of WN72A around the church. This one's facing east, but as you can see, north is pointed that direction. But here's the church right here on my map. And so WN72A would have been in this area right here and would have had some underground like storage bunkers and such. And I think some of them are still there. You'd have to go talk to the property owners. Anyway, so now this is just a slideshow of photos looking at everything that we've covered. This is from a recon on May 19th, 1944, looking at
another photo I don't think I've seen before. I don't know where you bloody pull these from, Michael, but I don't think I've seen that one.
I got ways. But
you've got contacts. Yeah, yeah.
But this one, I have this is zoomed in, but you can see on the edge of it, it says May 19th, 1944. That's on the original film. And this is from the same series. This is the next photo in the series. And you can see looking into the mouth right here. There is the R677 casemate. There is the SK casemate. And there is the Hotel du Casino, what's it called? The Chimera's house right there. WN71 right up here. This is everything we looked at. The anti-tank wall. And then this is a photo taken on D-Day that shows the Vierville descent getting shelled by the USS Texas. At least that's what the documents say. I mean, it could have been shells from another ship, but this is that same area we were just looking at. There's the tower, the tower from the church, the steeple of Vierville-sur-Mer. There's the SK casemate right there. Can you see my cursor, by the way, Paul?
We can. Yep.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just want to make sure. There's the SK case, or that's the R677 casemate. There's the SK. Kuzenbirch, also known as Le Chimera's house, is still there during this time. That was destroyed, though, on D-Day by these salvos. The Hotel du Casino is already collapsed, and this smoke is probably from that.
Just that go back to that photo for a second. The 121st engineers say that is the anti-tank wall going up.
You can see, you can see that this isn't the anti-tank wall exploding. The smoke.
No, but I'm just saying that's what they in their archives. They that has become known as the photo of the wall actually exploding. I mean, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm just saying that's what it within the 121st engineers, legend. That's that. Yeah. But I agree with you. I think that's a naval bombardment.
No, because the anti-tank wall is right here.
Is there? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I mean, I can see that though. They saw a photo of this and say, "Oh man, yeah, that's what has been going on." But I think it's a bit grainy. But I think the wall had already been blown by this point, or maybe it was just before it had been blown, before the 121 engineers.
I mean, that's fairly high tide, isn't it? So it's either it's either kind of very early afternoon, or it's the next high tide, which pushes it more towards the early evening.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but this is a photo taken after D-Day, a pretty good view of the side of the R677, where you can see the lower floor was filled in with cobblestone as much as possible. And one of the support is broken right here, and I depicted that in my artwork. But and then you can see up here the Hotel du Casino, the ruins of it are there. Really gnarly. That's the seawall. That's the seawall and some of the breakwaters on the beach of Dog Green sector. This is up on the bluff of WN72, looking down into the draw. You can see the ruins of the Le Chimera's house right here. That thing was destroyed also by naval salvos. This is the Villa Mary right here that was also destroyed. So these houses were obliterated. And then you have WN72 down here. There's the R677. That's the ruins of the Hotel du Casino after D-Day. Not much of it left, just a couple walls. That's up on WN71 looking down. The ruins of the Hotel du Casino just completely destroyed. And after the war, they rebuilt the house, but they built it a bit more towards the sea and a bit to the left. And it's still there today. But the original house, this is where it was right here, but it was destroyed on D-Day. Then those are ruins of the Le Chimera's house. There's the SK casemate down here, the R677 over here. That's up on WN71 looking west down at the R677 of WN72 right here. And then the SK are down here. So then this is a series from September 1944. This is down by the R677. That's the muzzle brake of the Pac 4341. And then looking up, we already looked at some of these. That's the WN71 plateau up there. There's the improvised MG pillbox. And then right over here, there's that concrete Feldmassieg with the two firing embouchures. Really cool photo here. One of the only color photos I've been able to find, original color photos I've been able to find, taken on Omaha Beach. And that's showing inside the Vierville descent. That's WN71 up here. You can see there's that double embouchure pillbox that was facing the draw. And the Americans mentioned that a number of caves and tunnels led from the Vierville descent up into WN71. Norman Coda's Jack Shea, who was Norman Coda's aide-de-camp, mentions that in his November recollection of the whole thing. And you can see the opening of one of these caves right here. Yeah. So really, really cool.
That's is the collective term, is the plural of ducks a flock? Is that a flock of ducks?
If you want to call it that, sure. Talking about this. 1 second, let me go back here. Talking about all these.
Yeah, I mean, if it's more than one duck, is it a flock? Isn't it? Surely.
Sure, why not? It's a gaggle.
If we start using it, it's common usage. If we start saying that multiple ducks in a photo is a flock, and it becomes accepted by the dictionaries, that's it. We've got ourselves in there.
Coined by Paul Woodadge, yes.
I mean, I've already got spang in common usage. Me and Colin did that, so we'll keep on going.
You're a trendsetter, sir. This is the rock quarry where the flock of ducks were located that we were just looking at. But the Americans they shipped a lot of this away, and I think the French did as well. You got these rock crushers here. That's the west embouchure of the double embouchure Feldmaßig of WN71. Really good photo there. This is up on WN72, kind of where the machine gun bunker was. Looking at some of the ruins of the Le Chimera's house, and then the rear of the R677 casemate right down here. And this is down in the descent. This is the back of the R677. You can still see some bits of the Eden Bellevue Hotel that are connected to it. And then this is right next to the SK casemate. This is the SK right here. And this is one of the positions, either an observation or perhaps even a firing position in the trench that led to the SK from the R677. Really cool. As you can see, like a lot of German positions, they have chicken wire covering it and put some stuff to try to camouflage it. So that's the destroyed anti-tank wall. It's completely blown in half. And hey, that's the double embouchure pillbox that you and I, were able to find.
Yeah,
thanks to
that's
Veronique.
great. I think I think you showed me that one there on your phone or your iPad or something. Yeah, it's a great photo.
That's taken from film footage, yeah, but it's the only one I've ever been able to find that shows this machine gun pillbox, that was taken in 1944. So when I discovered that, I nerded out like you wouldn't believe. So this right here is that position on top of the WN72 bluff that shows the Darn machine gun, the French Darn anti-aircraft machine gun, which is this right here. Really, really freaking cool. This is also the only photo I think I've ever found of Omaha Beach where you can see a German MG-34 machine gun right off to the side here. And then some other stuff, some Kar 98s over here, and then an unloaded German MP40 left right here. So usually don't find photos of German weaponry along Omaha Beach, but this is the best one I've been able to find.
And it's just a reminder as well, when that Simon True, we talked about you, your ears may have been burning. Simon True was in Normandy a couple of weeks ago, Mike, and he loves your work. So for those who don't know, Simon True was the chief instructor at Sandhurst for many years, the British equivalent of West Point. He edited all those battle zone books, and he was saying that figure of 85 machine guns along Omaha Beach was based on that survey done a few days after invasion, where they kind of looked at all the beaches and kind of did a bit of mental arithmetic and a bit of guesswork, looked at a few positions and came up with this mythical figure of 85 that people have then been using since then. But these photos remind us that within really hours of the last fatality, Omaha Beach is changing into a working port and harbor. And so by the time people start analyzing, so how many German weapons were there? You just said that people are taking them away. They're being taken away as souvenirs. They're being thrown overboard, etc. The idea of the only way to have taken an accurate survey would have been to not let any Allied troops anywhere near that beach for 48 hours after June the 6th and go through it with a fine tooth comb. The fact is, it's a changing environment. So these things that started these ideas about there's this number of weapons there, there's this number. It's a flawed process, and we must understand that when in these hours, no one was bothered about whether or not 81 years later, you and I would be able to try and break down exactly how many Germans were in this one and what weapon was there and how did this wall connect to that wall there. It was a living, breathing work environment.
Yeah, it's somewhat one of those things, and I hate to say stuff like this. I really do. I wish I had all the answers, but it's impossible to determine. It's impossible to determine because not only do you have all of these static positions of these WNs, but then you have the 352nd who were in the area, and who knows where their machine guns would have been. They were not static troops, part of the WNs. Their machine guns, their positions would have been in improvised dugouts and slit trenches and such that would have been dug wherever they wanted to. Yeah. So it's really
Adrian
difficult.
Made the point, like in all archaeology, the biggest enemy of remains is continued human occupation. It became in a sense a contaminated crime scene immediately. And the fact that people are saying why are the rock crushers there? Because they need rock to build roads. They're not thinking we better preserve this battlefield so people can understand exactly how it was in this
Yes.
moment in time. And even if you and I, Michael, were given the option of preserving Omaha Beach in a moment of time, which moment would we choose? Would we choose the beginning of the day? Would we choose the end of the? I don't know what moment I would even choose.
I know I can't. I mean, a hypothetical situation like that, it would be like, well, I want to see the whole thing, but you know, it's an impossible thing. I mean, for one, it's it's not going to happen, but you just have to really like. That's part of the game, though, is trying to figure this stuff out. That's part of the game. It's difficult, and it's in one way that's what makes it great. Is finding these answers and such that and these assumptions and these hypotheses. It's great. That's one of the things I love about it is how hard it can be.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, and this photo too, like I've had some people have asked me, well, how do you know that's on WN72? Because the collection it comes from, the Stuart Brandel collection, he pinpoints on every photo the coordinates where these photos were taken. So we do know that is WN72. And this is also on WN72. That's the remains of the Villa Mary house.
Yeah.
And then you have the SK casemate down here. And that's the SK casemate not long after D-Day because it still has the enfilading shield wall here. And you can see barbed wire pickets and such on top of it. That's a really good photo because that shows how it would have looked on D-Day. You see all of the enfilading shield wall, but then a ton of cobblestone that's piled up around it to try to camouflage it. And then this is sometime after D-Day where Americans had come through and they destroyed this wall. This wall wasn't destroyed by battle. This wasn't battle damage right here. You can see the wall still existed after D-Day. So the Americans, to make way for tanks and such to get off the beach, they did cut a lot of this out. They took a lot of stuff off of this bunker, and one of the things was the enfilading shield wall. That's the west embouchure of the SK. This one, the previous ones we were looking at, previous ones we were looking at are the east embouchures. This is the west embouchure, so the other firing port facing west. And that's the actual KWK 39L42 on the inside. And one thing that I love about these positions of Stutzpunkt Vierville is that they have these metal brackets fastened to the barrels, and that's for a training aid to mount a machine gun to where it could fire remotely a tracer round, and they could zero the gun in very easily.
Which you were the one to kind of break that. That was your thing. And I remember when you announced that, whichever show that was, I kind of pretended I knew that all along, but actually I was secretly like, for fuck's sake, this guy knows his shit. It seems obvious when I'd seen some of the photos, but I'd just not done that thing of putting two and two together and realizing what they were.
Yeah. Well, it's a really kind of obscure thing. I had to do a lot of digging to before that to really figure out what that was, because it's not terribly documented. You can find photos of it where an MG34 is mounted on these barrels, but it's very rare, and you have to translate a lot of German documents and such. But so yeah, this one has those brackets on it. The KWK, this KWK had it. The Pack 4341 had them, and then the gun that was in the casemate up on WN73 had them as well. You can see them in photographs. So that's a pretty rare photo taken on the inside of two Americans next to the gun. A better view of those brackets to mount a machine gun. And then that's the R677. The Americans put up a big sign here to show that this is the D1 exit leading to Vierville-sur-Mer. And this photo is pretty cool because it shows what a lot of this bunker would have looked like before it was cleared, before a lot of the cobblestone and such was cleared by the Americans. This whole front here would have had cobblestone from the Eden Bellevue Hotel resting along it. And that's what this stuff is right here. When it was hit, as we were talking about earlier, that damage that's right above the embouchure, when it was hit, all of that cobblestone and the remains of the building had fallen off in front of the gun. And you can see a lot of it here too. I think this photo was probably taken beforehand, but yeah, a lot of cobblestone that's covering the anti-tank wall that would have been covering the front of the casemate as well. It's all fallen off due to that shell hitting right there above the embouchure. Another really cool photo. You can see a lot of the remains of the Eden
That's the
Bellevue.
best one for showing the hotel, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And you can see cobblestones stacked up here. You can see bits of the original hotel. Really, really gnarly. Even the rail, some of the railing is left over. There's the embouchure again, where all of the rest of the Eden Bellevue Hotel had fallen when it was hit. There's a pretty good view of that damage that Paul was talking about. That
Yeah, I mean, we know we can't say for certain that was a destroyer doing that. I mean, it could have been a DD tank, missing the opening, but you know, you're at that point where you can't necessarily ascertain what did what. Certain cases when you can actually, there's some of those dings on the front of the lintel over the opening there. You can actually take a 30 round caliber bullet and put it in the holes, and they fit exactly.
Yeah,
but when you got a more sort of generic bit of damage, whether it was a 75mm shell or a naval round, at what distance, it becomes a bit woolly to try and determine what did what. Hence why we come up with SPANG as a term for like indeterminate damage caused by metal flying through the air.
Yes. Unfortunately, not everything has been 100% documented, so it does come down to that sometimes. But and then this is the interior that I was talking about. You can see on the Pack 4341, those are the original wheels, much bigger than those tiny ones that are on it today. So you can see the blast shield. It comes all the way up to the embouchure here, but it doesn't, hit the ceiling. This shows a lot of the damage that we were talking about earlier. There's that big chunk of the wall taken out. These are the 2 ammunition magazine walls here that were destroyed. And then on the left, you can see where a number of those ammo boxes for 8.8 centimeter anti-tank rounds stacked up that are still left there. You can see the edges of those boxes stacked all the way up, almost all the way to the ceiling. But you can also see where a number of these rounds had already been spent. And it looks like at some point the crew had stopped worrying about trying to throw them out the back, because that's what they would have at first been doing, and just started going through them, and they were piling up all over the floor, it seems. So pretty gnarly. And then here are some photos, just to cap off the whole trip of what we did. And I thank everyone who's watching this who contributed to that trip. It was so cool, and it was such a huge experience, for me, such a life-changing experience. That's Eva Cordell, who's the historian of Vierville-sur-Mer. He's in his 90s, and I was able to visit him with Veronique. That's Veronique right there. And thanks to her, she was able to translate, and we had a really good visit together. It was so cool to be able to talk to him.
And it's a great photo because it's showing that passing on the torch, if you like, is that like you, Michael, when I first came here and I put the website up there, all those incredible photos and resources on the Vierville website there are brilliant. And I started there, and you started there, and then with Nara, and then the fact that you met him and you're carrying on his work in a slightly different way, but is fantastic, because and there'll be someone following you and there'll be someone following me, because people say to me at the pub sometimes, but surely you've got every answer to Omaha Beach. Now, why are you still studying it? So, no. There's millions of questions still to answer.
It's endless. It really is endless. It's going to exceed, you and myself. So, no, it is great, and it was a really, a great experience to go there and see him and meet him and talk to him. And it was so cool, even though there was this language barrier and this massive age gap. We were both nerding out over the same things. So it was great. That's me inside of Tobruk. I think Veronique took that. So there's myself, Veronique, and Doug, who let me stay in his apartment while I was there. So thank you, Doug, and thank you for letting me come visit the Hardelay house. And hey, there's there are you and I at the Hardelay house. Yeah. And then that's my friend Holden. So, and thank you, Paul. You made it also a really awesome experience. Thank you for letting me stay with you and spending time with me and taking me around, and just making the experience way better than it normally would have been for someone who didn't have that guidance.
Well, it was cool, and it was really it was this is going to sound like it's an insult, but it's like a shit sandwich. You know, because you're younger than me, I kind of had this vision that you were really kind of hip and cool, but actually I realized you're just a sad geek like I am. You know, and it was like, okay, it's reassuring that you you are still cool, but you know what I mean. It was like, you know, you're just like us. But
I am a nerd. I will always be a nerd. I am a proud nerd, and yes, I am the nerdiest geek that you could imagine for this sort of thing. So I wear that on my sleeve. So I'm glad to know that I am one of you.
Yeah, and once in, you're never out. That's it. You can't. So you know, but yeah, the thing is, well. Is that your last slide? Is it? Yeah.
This one is the last one. Yeah, and then I have for following me on social media.
Yeah. I put the link to Mike's Patreon is in the description below, and I put the QR code up there again for you there. And I want to say it again, folks, is that the fantastic thing is Mike is sharing this information with us free here on World War II TV. This is, I was going to say hours, but it's weeks of work into this, years of work into this that comes out in an hour and a half presentation. But it's just extraordinary. And people say, does he do other beaches? You know, well, yeah, give him a chance.
I'll get to it eventually. I swear.
I mean, it is. I said it earlier on. It's that I still have to kind of pinch myself that you who've only been to Omaha once are leading the way for us in many ways who live. Okay, I don't just do Omaha Beach. I cover lots of other things as well. So the fact that we were brought together via the medium of the internet and what have you, so much of our stuff goes back to COVID and all that kind of stuff there. And I had met Niels before the first time we met in person, I think was in Normandy, a meeting of German interested historians. Then we met again in Arnhem, and then you and I meet, and then he's there and Veronique is there. And you can achieve so much more when you're in a group than when you're just there on your own. I mean, the fact you had Holden there, who would be a self-confessed not World War II geek, but you've got someone to bounce ideas off. You've got someone to just kind of be there to kind of catch the findings you're doing there. So it is a great thing that you're doing. And so to leave it there, what was the burning question that you would have liked to have sorted out in June that you didn't? Or was there something that you're further away from understanding now, having been there, that is the itch that you can't scratch with regards Vierville or Omaha more generally?
I wish I don't know. I wish I could have, like, if I could bring some sort of LiDAR equipment and scan everything. That would probably be. I wish I had more documentation from perhaps the German side of things and the French. I have a number of French and German documents as well, but a lot of this stuff is just kind of lost to time. But there wasn't really anything to where I was like, oh man, I wish I could have found that out, but I wasn't. It's just that I wish I could have spent more time there, and hung out with you and other people like you, hung out with Veronique some more. I ran into a number of historians on the beach who saw me. They're like, hey, don't you do the Omaha Beach stuff? And I'm like, yeah. And so it was cool to get to talk to people. There were a couple times where when I was at WN65, I wandered into the R667 and was just looking at it, just taking it all in. And a number of people came in and were saying things to themselves like, "Oh, I wonder what that's for." And I was just,
Oh yeah, I was there with you where there was a dad with his kids who was doing the dad thing. Oh, well, it's a gun of some kind. That
and so then I turned,
and you went into that level,
I turned around. And I basically became a tour guide for him, and I wasn't trying to school him or anything like that. I just wanted to enlighten them. I just wanted them to, and they were cool. They were like, oh, really? Okay, well, what about this? So that sort of thing I love. I love being able to, open people's mind and make them understand better stuff. I wish I could have done more of that, honestly. I would have loved to have maybe done some tours while I was there.
I said I had a few beers with Simon True a few weeks ago, and Simon's a few years older than me, and he's working on his next book, which is basically maps about Normandy, looking at the history of the mapping of the Normandy campaign, when he's got 2,500 original maps in his collection or something crazy like that. And the fact that Simon is geeking out over your work when he is,
I'm flattered.
He's if I know a bit about Normandy, Simon knows what I know times 10. You know, Simon's forgotten more about Normandy than I've ever learned. And the fact that, you know, we're recognizing that he's got his skill set and you've got your skill set, and I guess I've got a skill set, but it's the constant coming together of stuff to carry on our study, because, you know, Omaha Beach just has to be one of the most visited battlefields in World War II. It's going to be up there with Gettysburg, Gallipoli, possibly. There's some of the areas in the Somme, I would get Waterloo, possibly, and yet, and of those battles, it is one of the most recent. Gallipoli is the First World War. Waterloo is a century before, and yet Omaha, despite the fact we feel we all know it, there are still these huge questions to ask. The fact we can't say for certain what kills that 8.8 centimeter gun had. We can't say for certain what did the damage that knocked it out. That and probably will never be able to fully answer those questions. It'll only be a working theory.
Yeah, that's really it. You have to just narrow it down to an assumption, to a hypothesis, and you got to roll with that. But that's okay. There's nothing wrong with saying I don't know. There's nothing wrong with saying, you know, we don't know. Based on what we can gather, this is what we know. You know, that's there are a lot of people out there who want to be these authoritarians and want to say, like, this is what happened, believe what I say, and that's just not the way to go about it, in my opinion.
No, I agree, and it's, you know, it's, and if we did have all the answers, what would be the point of carrying on the research?
Yeah,
it's like people who collect rare baseball cards, and there's that one they want to get, and then they finally get it, and then now they've got no purpose. So what do I do now then?
Yeah.
And I think that is the thing that, you know, and people who come here, and I always make the point that not everybody can be able to travel to these places, but the fact that you recognize that Omaha, you could spend years living near it and still not see it all. I drive past, I think, well, I've never been in that copse of woods over there. I've never actually walked up there, and there's all the bits, as you said, behind the private houses and the area near the chateau in Vierville-sur-Mer. What secrets may some of those fields contain? You know, there's a lot of still information to do. So we got one last question from Kevin there, saying, how did you first get interested in Omaha Beach? Was it a book, movie, photos, what teacher? He is curious, as Kevin.
I think it stems all the way back to when I was probably 10 years old and saw Saving Private Ryan for the first time. And then growing up as a millennial, I played a lot of video games and such. And that's kind of where it all started from, I would say, in terms of my interest. However, since I became an adult, then I really, have over the years have started to really get serious about it. I think when I was probably like 17 or 18 was when I really started to get serious and actually look at documents and such. And I was going from just, the seeing it as a franchise and wanting to know the truth of it. Like, okay, I've seen this in movies and such. What actually happened though? So as much as I hate to admit it, it all does kind of stem from film and video games, but it eventually came down to wanting to know the truth, and when I was a teenager, I would say that's when it really started to get serious.
Yeah, no, exactly. And the fact is, your focus on the fortifications is a foundation, because Joe Balkowski, for example, has focused on the clearing of the positions and who landed and what they did, and he's encouraging younger historians to carry on his work. And but I think the understanding what was there before the Allies got there is a good foundational way of looking at Omaha Beach, because none of us can study everything in that detail. But
Joe knows so much about the 29th ID. I've asked him so many questions about it that he's sent me documents and such, and then I have a number of other 29th ID researchers. But he one time was for some kind of article that he was writing. He was asking me about German stuff. He was like, well, can you give me some details about this bunker and stuff like that? So everyone kind of has their niche that they're focused on. It's
impossible for all of us to know everything. I've got to the point where I can riff for 10, 15 minutes on most battles in World War II. But after 15 minutes, I start having to, defer to other people who've taken that study on beyond me. But and I've been here myself 25 years now. But yeah, you go out and you find a new monument, you find and you think, oh God, there's another avenue to explore,
Yes.
and try and pin it down. But anyway, we will leave things there. Mike, as you know, you're welcome to come back anytime. Folks, I encourage you to reach out to Michael via Instagram, social media, whatever. Yep. You have the maps you've created of Omaha Beach that you share with people. You're welcome to. You're happy to receive more information, more photos. And the other thing is you share as well, because it's ultimately, despite the fact it being your work, it's not technically your history. The bunkers
nobody owns history. Nobody owns history.
There we are. We will see that. So, folks, I have a rare show on Sunday, and Nala Ayed is joining me to talk about 2 SOE agents, and we're also going to do a very brief Tim Cook tribute, the Canadian historian who passed away last weekend at 54 years old, a real tragedy. 2025 can fuck off as far as I'm concerned. I've lost too many people I really love this year, and I'm getting fed up with it. So we're going to mention Tim Cook. But in the meantime, thanks everybody for your support, your comments. We got to most of the questions, and people were answering them in the sidebar. That was fantastic. So I will see you all again on Sunday. Cheers, everybody. Have a good Saturday. Cheers, Mike. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.